Hello. Everyone can hear me, right? Hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming here today for our Veterans Day presentation here at UROC. I am honored to present to you Paul Jones. Paul grew up in Aurora, Illinois, and graduated from Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut in 1968 with a major in religion. After completing Army Infantry Officer Candidate School, he was commissioned as the second lieutenant in September 1969. From June 1970 to April 1971, Paul served as an infantry advisor to South Vietnamese regional and popular forces in the Quang Ngai Province for his service. He was awarded the Bronze Star Medal for meritorious achievement and the Army Congressional Medal. Following his service, Paul earned a Master of Arts and an Education Specialist degree in College Student Personnel and Counseling Psychology from the University of Iowa. He later retired from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, where he served as an Associate Director of Admissions. So thank you so much, and please welcome in Paul.
Thank you, Angelica, and I'll ask the same question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Too loud, too soft? Okay, thank you. This is a return to campus here for me 17 years ago when I retired, and prior to that time, I was the transfer coordinator for the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And twice a year, I would come down with a group of other advisors to talk to prospective students wanting to transfer to UW-Whitewater. This campus has a lot of meaning for me in that I began my career in the UW system at UW-Fox Valley up in Menasha. Then, after 2 years, I came to UW-Waukesha as a Director of Student Services, and then transferred, so to speak, to UW-Whitewater. I came to campus a lot here, had many friends here. This is a wonderful campus, and I still have that same vibe here that it had 17 years ago when I was last here. So most of all, I'm very, very grateful to be able to talk with you today, and frankly, very honored. I know that we have one veteran here in our group, Carrie, who is retired. Retired Navy, and very glad to see you here. And as one veteran to the other, welcome home.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. As a Vietnam veteran still searching for meaning for that experience, I've read about 100, by my best count, about 100 books on Vietnam, its history, and all the various aspects of the conflict that the United States was involved in. Finding that meaning has remained very elusive for me because I just still, not a day goes by that I do not think about my experience in Vietnam. So there's always something more to think about and to ponder. My remarks today really derive mostly from a personal memoir that I am writing. I've been working on it now for about 15 years or so. It's still not finished and probably never will be because, as I said, not a day goes by in my life that in some way, shape, or form I think about Vietnam and my experiences there. There's always more to write and to think about. And although there were quite a few demons that I had to overcome, I have been very, very fortunate to have wonderful support from my wonderful wife, Margaret, in the back. Her brother is here also today, and I am just ever so grateful to Margaret and to John as well for their support. My purpose today is to, I hope, generate some discussion. So if you have any question at all, please feel free to just speak up, let me know, and I'll do my best to try to help get information for you. In addition, I brought a list of suggested readings about the Vietnam conflict. The Vietnamese, by the way, call it the American War. We call it the Vietnam War. Kind of an interesting difference there. But I do have the reading list here, which I'll put out in case you're interested. There are zillions of books that have been written and continue to be written about the experience and so on, some of which are very, very well written and valuable, and I hope I've listed some for you today. Most accounts written by Vietnam veterans and journalists typically describe, well, I'll just say it, horrific experiences, but also heroic actions, failures of leadership and politics, and so on. But my memoir, which I'm entitling The Luck of the Draw, really focuses mostly on feelings of what I have heard called survivor guilt. And this feeling of feeling guilty of having survived began when I was in college in 1968, when I was sitting in my comfortable residence hall room. I probably wasn't studying, but I was sitting there with a book in front of me. I'd gotten a letter from home telling me that a good friend of mine had been killed in Vietnam. This was the first actual experience that I had knowing that someone I knew and cared for deeply had passed away. Ramiro Cardenas was one of the best pitchers I'd ever faced. He and I got to know each other through baseball. And it seemed like every time our team played his, he would be on the mound. I'd come up to bat, he'd give me that funny grin, and I'd hit a dribbler to the shortstop. I don't think I ever got a legitimate hit off of him while he was while he was pitching. He was just an amazing, wonderful, kind, funny, handsome human being. And to learn that he had died in Vietnam quite literally was shattering to me. And that was the first feeling I had of feeling like he died, I didn't. The idea of survivor guilt kind of began at that point. It was also a very, very difficult time for America generally, because the anti-war protests, the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy occurred all during that time. Very tumultuous times. I graduated in 1968, and at that time I was faced with a choice of waiting around, being drafted into the Army. I could have perhaps gone to Canada, as some people did. I could have pursued conscientious objector status. All sorts of possibilities that came up. But my family history was such that I didn't feel that I could do that. My father fought in World War II. He was in some of the landings, very, very horrible experiences on the invasion of Sicily and then Italy, the beachhead at Salerno and so on. His father served in World War I, and my father's grandfather, my great-grandfather, served in the Civil War. And when you want to talk about amazing, fortunate circumstances in a way, he had his collar shot off and 2 horses shot out from under him during his experience in the Civil War. He survived, and was not harmed. But talk about amazing coincidences. At any rate, I enlisted in the Army thinking maybe I could take control of things and have a better experience that way. It's kind of a funny story, but a friend and I thought we would enlist to go to Armor Officer Candidate School, and we're going to learn how to drive a tank, go to Germany, and buy Porsches. Didn't happen. Instead, I was sent to Infantry Officer Candidate School, and then sent to serve in Vietnam. Even that had some very strange aspects. Before I received my orders for Vietnam, I received orders to be a general's aide at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Those orders were canceled about 2 weeks after I received them, and I got another set of orders telling me that I had to go to Fort Bragg and go through Special Forces training. Green Beret. I did not volunteer for that. And then I was going to go to language school to learn Vietnamese, become the Special Forces Green Beret. Those orders were canceled, and I was sent directly over to Vietnam. Upon arrival, I was assigned to a remote mountain district in Quang Ngai Province, which at the time was considered to be the most dangerous province in one of the most, in fact, considered to be the most dangerous area of South Vietnam at that time, who had come in, was assigned to an American unit about 10 miles away from where I was located. Those three guys were with units that were constantly in conflict, in firefights with the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army. By contrast, the remote village and district area to which I was assigned, where I was assigned for approximately 7 months or so, was quiet. Almost, I won't say nothing happened. We did have instances of mortar and rocket attacks, occasional sniper fire, and so on. But by comparison to what my friends and all too many other American soldiers experienced, ours was extremely quiet. And again, this feeling of, why me? Why was I so lucky to have been assigned to a place that was quite safe by comparison? And that feeling of survivor guilt just became extremely, I became extremely aware of that and wondering, why me? What purpose has this all served? I did serve with a company, that's approximately 250 soldiers, of what the French called montagnards. These were native to Vietnam, culturally and ethnically distinct from the typical Vietnamese people. But they were incredible soldiers. But our company was pretty much had the mission of defensive operations. Our area of operation was only about 10 to 15 miles or so radius out from our district headquarters. We would go on missions such as what were called medical civil action patrols, or MedCaps, where we would treat people, and primarily, just Vietnamese civilians and their children. And to my mind, this was one of the most important missions that we had to do, to provide security for the medics who would come in and treat the people. We treated a wide array of diseases, infections, disorders, some just too ghastly to describe, children with bloated bellies and open sores, eye infections. We delivered babies and so on. It was, to my mind, probably the most important thing that we did there. In war, the suffering of children, to my mind, is always the most horrific. One day, I witnessed a tragedy that still haunts me today. Our medic and I, typically almost every day, would go to the communal well. Children and their parents would come, and we would take a look at the children and inspect their health to whatever extent we could. We encouraged them. We always brought soap and plenty of candy to entice them to wash and be clean. We treated infections and did all sorts of things that I think were very, very important. We weren't aware at that time that a couple of children were playing with live ammunition near us. When all of a sudden, some of the ammunition that these children were playing with exploded, and a young girl lost several fingers on her hand. She was blinded in one eye and had pretty severe wounds also to her face. She lost, as I say, she lost her fingers and had, as I said, the severe wounds. We called for a medevac helicopter, which took her to the closest American hospital base. I never learned anything about her recovery and what had happened after that, but I will never forget the cries that she made after that happened. After several months in our remote outpost, I was reassigned to the headquarters of our command in Quang Ngai City, which is a very large, bustling city, very close to the South China Sea. My duties included giving daily briefings to our province senior advisor and his staff, assisting in operational planning for the province, coordinating operations and communications, and other duties as assigned. We were frequently rocketed and mortared and so on. At one point, I recall the siren went off and a 122 millimeter rocket landed about 75 or 100 meters from where I was standing and cut a Vietnamese civilian right in half, right in front of me. Here again, my thought was, I was not hurt. Why was I the lucky one? How did I, for what reasons, I guess, was I able to avoid being injured or worse? At one other time as well, I was driving in an open-top Jeep through Quang Ngai City. I heard a clunking sound in the back of the Jeep, looked back, there was a hand grenade rolling around in the back of the Jeep that someone had tossed into the vehicle. I noticed that they had not pulled the pin, so it was safe and did not go off. But here again, one of those things, I was lucky. The nagging question persisted. Why was I the lucky one not to be wounded or worse? I pondered that issue often, and quite frankly, almost to obsession. And at the time, about the best resolution or answer that I could find or arrive at to that question was that, well, this was the luck of the draw. You know, just, that's the way it happens. That's where the name of my memoir comes from. But that is really, it was a very unsatisfying explanation of my situation. And the feelings of, again, surviving, when in fact so many others were injured, both psychologically as well as physically. It was just very acute depressing and persistent. Why did I survive? Why were my assignments safer than those of so many others? 1 year to the day after my arrival in Vietnam, I boarded a plane, which we called Freedom Birds, that flew us, a large group of soldiers, home to my parents' hometown and friends. I still had 3 months to serve in the Army on active duty, which I did at Fort Benning, Georgia, before I was released from active duty. I was to attend the University of Iowa to begin graduate study. I believed that, oh, I'm home now, things are going to be just fine. They weren't. Anti-war hostility among college students and faculty and so on had been building since the early mid-60s or so. By 1971, when I came home, it had really reached a very, very, almost a violent pitch. Veterans especially were targeted for abuse, even on university campuses. One day I was accosted by a couple students who, I was wearing a field jacket, that's all I had for a winter coat. A couple of students came up to me and said, "Were you in Vietnam?" And I made the mistake of saying, yes, I was. One of them spit at me, he did not hit me, and asked me how many women and children I had killed. And that is just, that was my welcome home. And again, at that point, I kind of walked away from that particular situation, but the psychological damage had been done. And even though I completed my studies and did pretty well with all of that, I retreated into myself, keeping company only with safe friends, other veterans, and people whom I knew and trusted. But again, that feeling of why did I survive untouched, unfazed, stayed with me for quite a long time. And after pretty constant self-examination, sessions of counseling, and so on, I finally realized that I'd been asking the wrong questions, and that perhaps resolution of my concern were best considered in light of other perspectives. This is when I began to think that military training, among all the lessons that are given to veterans, teaches service members the necessity of looking out for each other. You may have heard the term, "I got your back," or "I've got your six," meaning I'm looking out for you, and so on. The Marines, I think, say it best when they say, "Leave no one behind." But all branches of service have very similar standards and ideals to that, and that only by taking care of each other can we survive and accomplish our goals. I had made an important choice in Vietnam to pursue graduate study in counseling, psychology, and college student personnel so that I might be able to help students make decisions in their lives and to help them in so doing. But also in so doing, I realized that I could help myself best by helping others. And that's the message, I guess, that's the message that I would like to leave with you today. And find that to be a helpful thought, and I am grateful again for you to be here today. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Again, I want to point out that I do have a reading list, a list of recommended readings about Vietnam, and I'll be happy to give you one. If any of you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. let me know. Angelica?
How long did it take you to be able to talk about this experience out loud?
Thank you. That's a very, very good question. Did everybody hear that? Okay. I'm not too sure I'm completely there yet, but I know I'm pretty close. I would say it took me a good, until about perhaps 10 or so, 15 years ago, that I truly became a little more comfortable with that feeling of what I did, what I experienced, and so on. Purchasing and wearing my Vietnam veteran hat, this is actually my second one, went a long way toward helping that, in that I was able to be, people came up to me and, thank you for your service and welcome home and so on. Plus I came into contact with other veterans and was able to kind of share experiences with them. But I would say it was quite a while for me to have come to that point where I could say, life is good, I'm happy with what I have. And again, my wonderful wife, Margaret, was so supportive and helpful that was a large part of it. There are all too many of our veterans, even now, who, I forget the number, it's in the, I don't know, somewhere around 20 veterans a day who commit suicide and so on. So, I guess that's a long-winded answer to your question, and I apologize for that, but I think that that's a major part as well of my continuing struggle to find meaning in that experience. Thank you for your question. So,
I have another question. So, since I told you about my uncle being a Vietnam War vet, and he was also in college too. He also, I think, he graduated college and then decided to enlist. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me that he felt that there was kind of a privilege, the people that already were have a degree, they were seen as a little bit more protected in a way. Do you feel that?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Yes, I agree with that. I think that the military, when you enlist, gives you examinations galore. Many of them are kind of almost, well, I don't know what you would say, but aptitude examinations and so on. And the persons with college degrees are given special consideration. I agree. At the time that I went into the service, the vast majority of infantry soldiers who were killed in Vietnam were poor, came from poor socioeconomic status, and quite a few from the South. A very, very over-representation of ethnicity and so on. But I think that I would definitely agree that having more education probably served people better, and that they were given better treatment, if you will, than those who did not. I think things have changed a bit lately, in that you can enlist in the service and you're given a guarantee. If you enlist to go to a particular school to get certain duty, assignments, that is a guarantee. And if the service does not follow through on that, many people are able to either bring a lawsuit or demand, if you will, that they be given the training they signed up for, or they can be released from the service commitment.
I have a fun question. So, did you get care packages from your family?
Yes.
And what was your favorite thing that they sent you?
Anything with chocolate. Anything with chocolate. Although there were some other things too. I wasn't a big fan of hot sauce, but many of the guys that I worked with, they put Louisiana hot sauce on everything. And that was one of the big treats also for all of us. But any kind of baked treat, like brownies and so on.
Were they stale by the time they got to you?
Pardon?
Were the baked goods, were they stale?
No.
Really?
Actually, yeah. The people who sent us stuff usually did a very good job wrapping things, so they maintained their freshness.
Good. Would you ever go to visit Vietnam to see how it is today?
We wanted to. We had a trip planned and we're ready to go just before COVID. And COVID killed the trip for us. And then after that, there were some kind of health issues and so on. So I was not able to. I really, really wanted to, but have not been able
to. My next question is, well, I'll just kind of bring this into experience that my uncle told me. I was just on the phone with him. He told me he served like 1968 till like 1969. And then he told me about when Dr. King was assassinated. He said at first when he was out there, he said he felt like everyone was unified. But when that assassination happened, he told me some people in his group like put up the Confederate flag and he felt that there was like a divide. So did you ever feel any type of like racial divide in the group you were with, or were you all just unified?
Absolutely, yes, I did. It began, well, the Black Power movement, which began, I don't know my exact dates, but it was the early mid-60s or so, and became stronger to the point where there was actual a lot of physical conflict between blacks and white soldiers, and throw in the mix of a lot of my fellow soldiers coming from the Deep South were, how do I want to say it, the bias was there. And so there was very significant conflict. In my particular unit, I did not find or see or experience a lot of that, but I heard a lot of reports of situations like that where literally there was fighting and so on that happened. Are we done? Again, I thank you. This is the second speech I've done on my experiences. The last one